Thank you for joining me today. Today I want to talk about John the Baptist and the original prophet Elijah the Tishbite, and discuss whether or not John the Baptist was the original Elijah who was to come. First, let's take a look at Malachi chapter 4 and where we get the prophecy of Elijah the Tishbite coming. And we read, "Behold, I am going to send to you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. He will restore the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, so that I will not come and smite the land with a curse." Now in Luke, Gabriel is speaking to Zacharias, who would be the father of John the Baptist, and he's talking to Zacharias about the son he is about to have. And he says, "It is he who will go as a forerunner before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, and the disobedient to the attitude of the righteous, so as to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." So John the Baptist's purpose was to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. In John 1, we see some people who were sent forth from the Pharisees, and they're asking John the Baptist who he is. And we read, they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" And he said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Well, who are you? So that we may give an answer to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" And he said, "I am a voice of one crying in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way of Yahweh,' as Isaiah the prophet said." So if you notice, there are three different people who were prophesied to come. The first one was Elijah the Tishbite, Elijah the prophet. The second was the prophet, and that is referring to Messiah. And the third one was the voice of one crying in the wilderness, who was to prepare the way for God, Yahweh. So let's read these prophecies as they were originally put forth. In Isaiah we read, "A voice is calling, 'Clear the way for Yahweh in the wilderness, make smooth in the desert a highway for our God.'" Now, the fulfillment of this was John the Baptist, who was in the wilderness, and he was preparing the way for Yeshua, Jesus the Christ. The second prophecy was about the prophet to come, and this prophecy was given to Moses, and it says, "Yahweh your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your countrymen. You shall listen to him." And we also read, "I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you," meaning like Moses, "and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him." And of course we know that Yeshua fulfilled this prophecy. And what I don't have here is a portion of the scripture where it says anyone who does not listen to this prophet will be cut off from the people. And if we also remember, Jesus, Yeshua, told the people, if you believed in Moses, you would believe me. Okay, and then we come to the third prophecy, which was in Malachi, which said, "Behold, I am going to send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of Yahweh. He will restore the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, so that I will not come and smite the land with a curse." Now, again, this is a prophecy about Elijah the Tishbite, Elijah the prophet. And this is really interesting because it says he's going to come before the great and terrible day of Yahweh, and it also says what his purpose in coming is, which is to restore the fathers and the children to one another, and also to the reason for doing that is so that Yahweh does not come and smite the land with a curse. So we really want to ask ourselves, was the land smitten with a curse after John the Baptist gave his message? And that just kind of depends on how you view it. I mean, do you view the temple being destroyed in 70 AD as a curse? Do you view the people who the Jewish people being slaughtered after, around the 70 AD period as a curse, do you view the Masada incident where they killed themselves rather than be killed by the Romans as a curse? Do you consider the dispersion of the Jewish nation, the Jewish people into all the world, a curse? Okay, now let's go to Matthew, where Jesus is speaking to the crowd of people. And he says, for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. Meaning, this was all prophesied and up until John, and now John's going to fulfill something. And if you are willing to accept it, John himself is Elijah who was to come. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So a key portion of what Jesus said is, if you are willing to accept it, then John himself is Elijah. Did the crowd accept what John said? Did they accept John as Elijah? Well, if they did, then their hearts would have been turned back to the fathers and vice versa, and the land would not have been smitten with a curse. So you have to ask yourself, were their hearts turned back to the ways of their fathers, and was the land smitten with a curse? Okay, in Matthew chapter 17, Jesus is now going to talk directly to his disciples. And he said, and his disciples asked him, why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Because they knew the Messiah was here. And he answered and said, Elijah is coming and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah already came, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wished. So also the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he had spoken to them about John the Baptist. Now, I want to point something out here. And that is that Jesus was talking to his disciples after John the Baptist had already died. John the Baptist had been beheaded by Herod's men, and he was already dead at this point. So Jesus is talking to his disciples after John the Baptist is already dead. So let's go back to the beginning of Jesus' answer and take a closer look. Jesus said, Elijah is coming and will restore all things. Again, he said this after John the Baptist was already dead. So John the Baptist was already dead when Jesus said Elijah is coming, meaning Elijah will still come in the future. Jesus then went on to say Elijah has also already come. And when he said that, he was referring to John the Baptist, who came in the spirit and power of Elijah. I also want to remind you that shortly after this conversation, some of the disciples were with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration when they actually saw Moses and Elijah. They didn't think that Elijah was John the Baptist. They knew who he was. They knew he was Elijah. They saw Moses and Elijah. They called him by the name Elijah and not John the Baptist. So there is a distinction made in Scripture. And are there two witnesses coming? Yes, we see that clearly in the Revelation. And is one of them going to be Elijah? According to Jesus, yes. Because he is still coming, according to the conversation Jesus had with his disciples. And let's look again at that Malachi prophecy. He said, I'm going to send you Elijah the prophet, and that would have been understood to the Jewish believers as Elijah the Tishbite, before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. Now, we know that Yeshua came twice, or is coming twice. The first time he came as a lamb and meek and lowly. The second time he is coming on a great and terrible day where there will be judgment and a sword. He is going to restore the hearts of Elijah is going to restore the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And he's doing that so that Yeshua will not come and smite the land with a curse. And if we look back the first time, the hearts were not changed. They were still hard. They did not accept the message that came in the spirit and power of Elijah. But the second time, they are going to accept the message. And it says in the Hosea prophecy that in their affliction they will seek me early. And during that affliction, they're going to be hearing this message from Elijah the prophet who is to come.